TV umpire to director, we have a player review. Can we rock and roll, please?
Hello and welcome to Bits and Pieces. This is allegedly a cricket podcast, but really a way for all of us to hang out together. Much like India's opener slot, the co-hosts of this episode this podcast will keep changing through different episodes, hopefully not mid-episode. But let's go through the list of your hosts who are bringing you this. I am Tony, your resident non-cricket expert on the show. In fact, I am such a non-expert that I'm the only vocal Ravi Shastri coaching fan over the last 4 to 5 years, right? And very famously, I also am a New Zealand hater. So I've been brought in here only for my left arm bowling skills. But I am joined by two verified Twitter handles. The first of which is at PGK of the Nut Graph fame. Which you will know is basically a plot of all of the times that Joe Root has been hit on his unmentionables. Say hi, PGK.
Hi, Tony. Hi, everyone else. Let me just say that despite my verified status on Twitter, the one thing that I never tweet about is cricket. It is one of those personal
This
things.
is great. This is great.
Yeah, I have never tweeted about cricket.
Yeah, which brings us to the next verified handle, way before El Shiva was, which is at Srinath Sripath, former ESPN Cricinfo digital marketing and content wizard and current international man of mystery, right? He has made it to this podcast from Switzerland, and despite this is actually true, despite failing a yo-yo test, which actually qualifies him to be a part of this podcast. Say hi, Srinath.
Hey, Tony. I'm envious of PGK's audio quality, and I only tweet about cricket. So there you go.
Yeah, we're joined by two more unverified but uninhibited hosts. The first of whom is the actual OG of cricket talk shows in the digital format. He has rubbed shoulders with the best in India's cricket commentary, after which he promptly took a bath and made a change of career. So with a full-fledged life of entire cricket memories, which at some points in time we think he's just making it up because no one else was there to watch it. Say hi, Nitin Sundar.
Hey, hi guys. Hi, Tony. Hi, PGK Srinath. Great to be on this show. Yeah, I've been watching a lot of cricket recently. Haven't watched a single ball of the Ashes. I don't think you can blame me for that. It's been blink and you miss it anyway. My single point crusade with this podcast is to try and convince more people around the world that umpires don't deserve to exist.
Wow, this is actually going head on with another famous cricketing podcast, which we shall not name for purposes of not being sued for libel so quickly. But rounding up the co-host panel this week, he has flown with Dean Jones. He's lunched with Adam Gilchrist. He's bowled leg breaks to Sachin Tendulkar at some point, I'm sure. But how can you verify that? But anyway, we have all the way from Melbourne, currently back after unsuccessfully negotiating Djokovic's visa deal, Mohan Krishnamurti. Say hi, Mohan.
Hey, Tony. Lovely to be here. My claim to fame here is that I'm the only NRI on this show. Every podcast requires an NRI, I believe, and in my definition of NRI is not required Indian, and not non-resident Indian. So I'm apparently famous for uncle jokes or dad jokes or whatever, and I have a hatred for commentators from Bangladesh. Bangladesh will only improve if they get good commentators. Is my hypothesis.
Yeah,
didn't stop India.
We should tell the listeners that Mohan will continue to make dad jokes because he doesn't have a mic with a pop filter on it, unlike the professional recorders, me and PGK. But also for the listeners, Mohan is not the only NRI here. This is actually a transcontinental podcast because three of us are in India. we have representation from Australia, and Srinath's actually based in Switzerland. So this is
I got that, but I'm the only not required Indian.
This is true. And last but not the least, the most important person on this podcast, you, dear listener, because you have the power to obviously join us, but also turn us off at any point in time if we are boring you. We know that we are carrying a weighty responsibility as amateur podcast hosts. It's not like we are professional Australian commentators that we can say any shit and get away with it, right? So thank you for joining us, and let's get right into it. And to be honest, we don't know how this podcast is going to go. Much like Shardul Thakur's wobble seam deliveries, it can go one way or the other, but we hope to pull through for the journey from Palghar all the way to Oval Maidan in Mumbai. So to start off with, why are we calling this Bits and Pieces? One of the things that I, as a non-expert cricket fan, dislike is that there is a severe amounts of gatekeeping that happens in cricket, right? So if you've just started watching the game, it's like, hey, you don't know this, you don't know that. Where were you when this thing happened in Chennai, 99, whatever, right? So Nitin Sundar, you've given the name to the podcast Bits and Pieces. For the uninitiated listener, what is the cricket reference to Bits and Pieces, and why are we called Bits and Pieces?
Well, we are called Bits and Pieces because I think Sanjay Manjrekar made the term very popular. It's one of those terms that has been famous in cricket for a while, like military medium. That was another phrase that I thought of suggesting, but then I didn't, right? I think because actually military medium has died for some reason, right? I remember Robin Singh back in the day, whenever they would mention Robin Singh's name, it would come with military medium. But because more and more bowlers have specialized and, sort of either learn to bowl a little faster or spin the ball, I think that term has sort of gone away. But Bits and Pieces doesn't go away because, the best all-rounder in the game was termed Bits and Pieces by Sanjay Manjrekar. And it is just endured. I think the latter stage of Sanjay Manjrekar's commentary career has been living down or fronting up, how you want to put it, to the fact that he used those words, and how does he justify them going forward? How does he put up with the fact that Ravindra Jadeja continues to do so well all the time? So, and I think it's an apt term to use to describe all of us amateurs trying to do something here. So yeah, I just thought it sounded good.
Yeah, actually, military medium is, I thought it was a craft beer in Bangalore or something like that, but clearly not. So
just on that point, if we, there were many choices for the name of this particular podcast, and we could have spent nearly 4 hours discussing what are possible names. And there are lovely podcasts as well. We should recognize that we're standing on the shoulders of some important and interesting people who've been doing this for many years. But cricket has got lots of these phrases that no one really understands where they come from and what they are. I've always wondered about this phrase, honest charger in. So we don't know where this particular phrase comes from, but it sticks. And are we honest chargers in? Maybe we are. So we have so many phrases that we could use that absolutely don't make sense in the current milieu. But there they are. But Bits and Pieces stuck.
Yeah. And Mohan, very crucially, we've all been part of a WhatsApp group since Twitter's gone to shit. I think that's okay to say. But basically, one of the things that has endured for the longest time in cricket is that the next 45 minutes are the most crucial for this test, which, like you rightly pointed out, is also the theme for this podcast. We'll try to keep it at around 45 minutes, depending on if you're able to get enough content / garbage in. We'll probably rely on Steve Smith coming in and bowling a couple of overs towards the end and taking wickets. For listeners who are doing this later, we are recording on the 9th of Jan 2022. So Happy New Year to everyone. But also we've just witnessed England pulling off a New Zealand in Kanpur with surviving the 4th test by the skin of their teeth, despite Steve Smith actually picking up 1 wicket as a bowler.
Yeah, so Steve Smith, we all look at him as this idiosyncratic batsman with a Bradman-esque record going around now. But back in the day, he started off as a spinner. And like we found out, he was the joint highest wicket taker in the 2010 World T20. Right? Who would have thought?
Yeah.
Right.
So he's basically won by Ashwin, who started off as an opening batsman and is like now running rings around batsmen. But also both of them are coming to the fore. Ashwin with the bat now and Steve Smith with the ball. So
once upon a time, Steve Smith was a bits and pieces cricketer who's eventually become a batting legend.
Actually, some time between when Ravindra Jadeja was mockingly called Sir and Shardul Thakur was mockingly called Lord, we all grew up. I think that's fair to say.
Does anyone have a theory why some cricketers who are really at the peak of their batting prowess suddenly end up becoming those bowlers that are able to take like wickets, break partnerships? Clutch is another term. We've spoken about military medium. Clutch bowlers. Where are those people? Why doesn't that happen anymore? Actually, it still happens. You had like Tendulkar who used to do that. Michael Clarke who used to do that. Now there's Steve Smith. Now there's Joe Root. But Kohli does not bowl. So we should ask our question. Should Kohli bowl? And maybe that will change his fortunes.
I thought you were actually talking about Shardul Thakur, who is at the peak of his batting powers right now.
Yeah, now we have these googly players, right? Earlier you used to have googly bowlers. Now you have googly players. Like, is Washington Sundar a bowler or a batsman? I don't think it's still answered. But I think Washington Sundar's dad will agree that till he scores a test 100, he shall be like a bits and pieces player. So
he's not even a person. He's not even a human being. He should get 100. Only after that are you now allowed to step inside the house. Okay.
Like all South Indians, he needs to get the centum.
Exactly. But it's fair
an interesting
to conclude.
point that PGK raised about batsmen who used to bowl well at the peak of their careers, right? The moment he said that, the first name that came to my mind, or that first image that came to my mind, was the 98 tour, Australia tour of India, where Saurav Ganguly became opening bowler for India. And he also kept taking wickets, right? I remember there Greg Blewett or someone, I think, very early on in the test match, he shared the new ball with Srinath. And those guys couldn't lay bat on ball. And that also was the time when Ganguly actually used to score runs, right?
Unlike now, where he's basically a runner for someone else in the board. But okay.
Cool. But we have lost the 3 Bengali listeners.
but tell me this, didn't Sunil Gavaskar used to open the bowling at some time for India? Or
He did. There were many times when he actually opened the bowling for India, and often they would have Solkar and Gavaskar or Gavaskar and Ghavri opening the bowling, and Ghavri would come in and later and bowl spin as well. But yeah, Gavaskar did open the bowling many times, but that's a team that had 4 spinners. And often all 4 would play in the team. So you needed someone to open the bowling, and Gavaskar would do that pretty badly. But still he would do that for a few overs. They'd roll the ball along the ground, and then Prasanna, Bedi, Chandrasekhar, Venkat would come in and start bowling from over number 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. Yeah.
Can I do a quick fact check here? The 4 spinners, if I remember correctly, only played together once.
Wow.
That's true.
Yeah. The quartet has only played together in 1 test. And if I'm not wrong, it is the test that they won in England, which led them to win the first series, if I'm not wrong.
But the point I'm making broadly is that you had 4 spinners world-class spinners to choose from. Any 3 of them would play. Not that they won a huge number of tests overseas for India, but still they did win some really important tests. And in those, I think Gavaskar would open for a little bit and then carry on.
I feel like 40 years from now, everyone will talk about India's space quartet like this. Shami, Bumrah, I don't know, Siraj and Ishant probably.
How do we leave Shardul Thakur out of that?
He's the all-rounder, man.
He's actually a better Cameron Green than Cameron Green, right? Because the way these Aussie commentators hype up Cameron Green, although he's not like really done anything significant, except like take the last wicket in the 3rd Ashes test and celebrate like he won the test for Australia when Boland had taken 6 for 7. Is that right? But like Shardul Thakur, I want to posit is a better Cameron Green than Cameron Green is.
I would let Mohan come in, but before that, let me just say that this Australia's obsession with Cameron Green, and I'm sure Mohan will be able to explain it better, comes from a longer obsession that Australia has for looking for that great number 7 all-rounder. They have been searching for this person for like 20, 30 years. So anyone comes like that, oh my God, he's the one. This is the Keanu Reeves. This is the person who's going to be that person. And they've done this for a while. Like, think of all the names. It was like there was Shane Watson was that person for a while. Ashton Agar was that person for a while. Now it's like Cameron Green. So this obsession just continues and continues and continues.
It's a proper actual series called Agar Tum Na Hote. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
So you just stole my thunder there, both PJK and Tony. This is exactly what I was going to say. Australia has been obsessed with that bowling all-rounder ever since they lost the Ashes. And you know, with Ben Stokes there, they've been, and even before Ben Stokes, England had that bowling all-rounder. And Australia has been obsessed with that. They've had some really ordinary players, and sometimes some good ones occupy that spot. Mitch Marsh is a national obsession, for example, right? So this is how bad it is. Whether they're good or not, they just bring in these players who can bowl a little bit and bat a little bit and hype them up. It's like India's search in the 90s for the next Kapil Dev. Luckily, that has died down, and no one is being compared to be the next Kapil Dev. And that, I think, is a blessing in disguise for the Indian team's development itself.
Kapil Dev is actually the previous Shardul Thakur.
He's okay. This is a very Christian/Catholic joke, but he is the John the Baptist for Shardul Thakur, like the person who follows.
You'll have to explain that joke to the listeners.
The OG, yeah.
So when John the Baptist came, everyone thought this was the Messiah that people spoke about, right? Because he was like a God in some senses. He was not a God, but like, whatever. But he basically said, I am not the person who comes after me. I'm not even like, qualified to tie his shoelaces. So that is Kapil Dev to Shardul Thakur, Lord Thakur, as it were, in some senses. We should start a new religious cult. I think it'll have a lot of fun. But Mohan, to your point, I believe Australia's bowling all-rounder is actually Marnus Labuschagne, right? And I'm pronouncing his name incorrectly, obviously. So.
Absolutely. So this is an appropriate time to include a segment, which we've called "What Would Harsha Say?" And over to you, Nitin, to expand on this, if you know exactly how his name is pronounced.
Oh, it's very important that we pronounce cricketers' names and the names of places correctly, because that's what it's all about. So we go to Beausejour in West Indies, and we would watch Marnus Labuschagne bowl and bat.
Wait, isn't it Labuschagne? Or am I like...
This is like with strong deja vu. There is a video by some New Zealand cricketer in a press conference actually asking
Neil Wagner.
Exactly. Yeah, it was Neil Wagner, exactly. He was asking exactly this question. Is it Labuschagne or is it Labuschagne? Which one is it? Okay, whatever it is. And then he goes on.
Another expert from South Africa, Harsha, would probably say, it's actually Labuschagne, as they say in the high veld of South Africa.
Wow. Okay, I think at this point in time, we have to tell our listeners this is not an inserted laugh track from the Oscom box. It is actually us laughing like idiots. So forgive us for that, but very well done, Srinath, on getting Labuschagne right. But I believe you've got what has happened currently is with whatever has happened towards the beginning of 2022, it's not a very happy situation. We all know the biggest comeback that has happened in 2022. Usman Khawaja, like right before the tour to India, man. Like, why are all of these guys kicking up form? But Srinath, you had an interesting point to make about Marnus, which is that he may eat as many chicken sandwiches as he wants to, but we don't have to worry too much about him.
Yeah, with Marnus, I think he actually started off and was called in, I believe, as a replacement for someone during Australia's tour of the UAE, where they played
Steve
Pakistan.
Smith.
Yeah, so Marnus comes in, plays in the UAE, gets dismissed by all of Pakistan's spinners, and I think Mohammad Abbas in a 2-test series. And then he goes to England, to the north of England, to Durham, seam-friendly conditions, gets ready to face the English attack, then faces a load of English bowling in England, scores truckloads of runs, becomes the world's #1 test batter after doing the same in Australia. So effectively, he's only played in Australia and England in addition to the UAE. And his next 3 tours are, you can't make it up, Pakistan, India, and Sri Lanka. So effectively, he's become the world's number 1 batsman on the basis of 2 countries, which is basically Bradman. But we'll see how that goes.
Ooh, burning lots of people here.
That was like simul shade at Marnus and Don Bradman. Wow. Okay.
But I'll tell the thing about, because you also spoke about Khwaja. So Australia has one of these teams which was fairly like clear right from the 90s and the 2000s that, look, we have a set team, and this was during their golden era. So whenever somebody else would come in, even if they come in as a one-off test when somebody's injured, even if they make a century, even if they make like 5 wickets, they'll be like, cool, good for you. Now please step back because our main team is back. So this is like part of the Australian psyche, right? So at this same time, in the England tour, Steve Smith got the concussion injury. Mohan, you're right. And that is when Marnus comes in. And Marnus scores a lot of runs. And of course, Steve Smith comes back in the next test. And normally what would happen, they would look at this entire thing and say, okay, sorry, Marnus, now you have to sit out. Now Steve Smith is back. But no, they looked at their lineup and said, who can we remove who can fit Marnus in? And the person they removed was Khwaja. So Khwaja lost his space in the team and Marnus comes in. And since then, Khwaja has never played a test for Australia until the current one. So now he's come in and he's made these 2 centuries, and he's in all his interviews, he's now very, very clear. He's like, yes, of course, I know that Travis Head is going to come back and I'm going to sit out the next year, because that's how it works in Australia. I mean, I don't want that to happen to Travis, what happened to me. That's really what he's saying right now.
This is ridiculous, right? Like we played Travis Head, I believe, like at least 2 or 3 times, and he was pretty like average, right? Like, I mean, you could replace him with any nameless, faceless entity and it wouldn't have mattered. But this bugger went and scored 150 in Nathan Astley kind of innings, right? So how do you keep Travis Head out now?
And suddenly became vice captain for the series, I think, because of all the Tim Payne stuff. Yeah, he was vice captain briefly, because Cummins sat out the second test. So Smith, and then I think Head was the vice captain for a game.
Oh, when
so
Steve
now there
Smith
is speculation.
Yeah.
So now the speculation, you're right, they cannot keep out Travis Head because of all of this. So now they're looking at Marcus Harris and saying, maybe this guy. Yeah. So basically 2 years from now, when India tours Australia in the first year, Marcus Harris is going to come back and make 2 centuries. So that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, but this is interesting, right? Because Australia have had a spate of vice captains. I don't know if you guys remember the last time we taught them before this, obviously recent spectacular Gabba Sydney thumping and all of that. Josh Hazelwood was actually the vice captain, right? And now,
it was indeed.
Yeah, and Scott Boland has come in and taken 6 for 7, and he's removed Root multiple times. There's this crazy stat that Root's average against Boland is some 9 or some ridiculous number like that, right? So how is these vice captains, I think they need to form a separate 11 of their own. In fact, the actual stat is that Scott Boland has dismissed Joe Root 3 times since he last scored a run off him. So like 0 runs for 3 wickets is Scott Boland's record. Good luck coming back, vice captain Josh Hazelwood.
There's also so many of these characters, right? Like quick nod to our one of our favorite podcasts, The Great Cricketer, who are running a campaign for Will Pukowski to come back. And Will Pukowski is pretty much like their next big batting hope at the top of the order. And because he's had all these concussions and injuries, he just started playing great cricket last week. And these guys are running a campaign saying, that's good enough if you're facing England and Australia. That's like absolutely fine. You play one great game, you're ready to face Anderson and Robinson and Broad in Hobart.
Yeah. I mean, in the words of another famous sports person, skate to where the Pukowski is going to be, not where he is right now.
Which brings me to an idea for an important segment, an interesting segment, perhaps in future podcasts. And you can always pick up anything from what Australia does and have a segment on why do we dislike Australia so much? And it's not just Indian fans in general, but more broadly. But that's probably for another day.
Hey, you. Yeah, you, listener. While these fellows are rambling on, I want to tell you something very quickly. We've managed to sneak in the entire final day's play from Lords 2021 from India's famous victory in the show notes for this podcast, but don't tell anyone. But if you are still listening to this podcast and you love it, why not tell your friends about it, because this is literally episode 1 and we could use all of the help that we can get. Okay, before these guys notice, let me get you back to the show.
We missed a segue when we talked about Manas and also more recently to talk about India's test, the New Year's test in South Africa. And maybe we can focus on that a little bit.
Yeah, are we all just skirting the uncomfortable topic that India went in?
That's exactly my feeling, which is why I steered it into this. I thought the reference to Labuschagne and Highfeld and all that would have led us quite naturally into a discussion on that test, but we just moved away from it very, very quickly, pretending that it didn't happen. So let's not live in denial and talk about it. I think we can blame any number of things that, I used to hate a program on TV called Match Ka Mujrim. I used to absolutely hate it. But, we can blame any number of things, any number of players, any number of incidents that happened. But I think if we are really honest and look at it very in a black and white way, we lost the test on day one. Our batting was pretty awful, and we having won the toss, we had no ability to build a total. I thought we played like millionaires to some extent, and lost the plot on day one. And after that, you're always behind the 8 ball to come back into the game. The bowlers actually did pretty well. If you look at control metrics, the Indian bowlers actually did pretty well. And the pitch got easier, but that's here, neither here nor there. I think we actually lost the match on day one.
Absolutely, I agree with what Mohan said. This South African attack definitely.
Hold on. For a long time WhatsApp group members, this is an epic moment where actually Nitin and Mohan are agreeing on something. I think we need to put in a 1 minute silence. We don't have a commercial break on this podcast, but like 1 minute silence for Mohan and Nitin agreeing with each other. Go ahead, Nitin.
Okay, go for it.
Yeah, this was definitely the worst South African opening attack that I have seen in ages. I know that Duane Oliver got a lot of wickets and was bowling fast some time back, but he's had COVID or something and he's come back. He's running up like Guy Whittle. He doesn't even have a leap, and he's opening the bowling for South Africa, right? Like we spoke about Saurav Ganguly opening the attack for India a few years back. Seeing Duane Oliver, I was like, okay, what really has happened to South Africa? This is how far they've regressed. And India were not able to score off them, right, on day one. I think the game was lost there. The real hope for me was that, when India does eventually lose a test match like this, it would be because the batsmen failed so abjectly that the selectors and everyone would be forced to make the tough calls that they've been avoiding for a while. And going back to the match ka mujrim point that Mohan raised, I was hoping that Rahane and Pujara could shape up as the match ka mujrims in this game, but unfortunately they showed up at the right time, did just enough to save their careers, did just enough to give India even a fighting chance in the 4th innings. But I think after India underperformed on day one, South Africa just consistently played better than India throughout the test match. They bowled better. I remember reading somewhere that the fact that the South African bowlers are taller gave them a great advantage on this particular pitch, because they were able to exploit the up and down variability a lot more than the Indian attack was able to, which was evident in the way the game progressed. And I think they just batted with a lot more bloody-minded grit than India did. So, yeah, fully deserved win for South Africa. And I think they actually are favourites going into the 3rd test. But let's see how that goes.
I hear you, but I don't hear you. I'll tell you why. It's just, really, it's like, look, has nobody lived through the 90s and the 2000s? This is just, it's fine, guys. There are matches like this. You cannot point to anything in this match and say, okay, this went wrong, that went wrong, this was there. Yeah, sure, you can quibble, you can do these things. This is also why I'm not a big fan of people looking at, oh my God, Rishabh Pant, we need to get him into a room and Dravid and Kohli must spank him with a middle stump. No, it's fine. It's okay. These things happen. You go for things, you try it out. Bowlers probably had slightly a bit of an off day. The batsmen were okay. Yes, it was fine. Like I said, 9 out of 10 times, this Indian pace attack would have defended 240 on the final day of a crumbling pitch. It just didn't happen, and it's all right. I'm just really excited that we have a cracker of a finale at Cape Town. That is what I'm really excited for. Is this what Australian fans felt like in the 2000s? Because now it feels like, oh, finally there is an exciting finale. And I'm really looking forward to that. And we should talk about that once we're done.
That's actually all I was about to say. I was watching the Dravid press conference after the game. There were questions like, were you guys complacent? Did you take this for granted? I'm like, man, this is India in an overseas series in South Africa after the first test, which they famously never won and always lost and got trashed. And we used to blame things like, oh, there were no practice matches, our bowlers weren't prepared, and so on. Here you are in the middle of a COVID bubble. You're going without the same no practice game scenario. And India is like one in Centurion. Like this is like almost an alternative reality for people who've lived through the 90s and 2000s. And I think it's absolutely no sort of, look hard and long and hard within yourselves kind of scenario. Absolutely none of that, because like the same Rishabh Pant was playing these shots in Australia not so long ago, and he won at the Gabba of all places, right? Like he might have played it a little too early in his innings, but don't need to, start some sort of, I don't know, long and hard investigation based on, a couple of bad days in a test.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I wouldn't have put it past you fuckers to, not mention Shastri, but like not mentioning Kohli amongst the four of you is like a mistake I'm not willing to, take just lying down, right? Like the Kyle Jamieson is kicking in. But basically, you know what, when South Africa went into bat into the fourth innings, everyone, all the experts, all of the commentators, including Winvis, or like we like to call it Slats after Michael Slater. Basically, this was a joke made by Karthik, who's not on this podcast, but is part of the WhatsApp group. Basically saying Winvis is basically just Michael Slater sitting in some random truck and inputting random numbers, right? But irrespective of that, I don't think anyone would have predicted a South African win when they were chasing 240, right? Except for Nitin, who was sort of drawing parallels to the 2007 Cape Town test, when all of us were drawing parallels to the 2018 Johannesburg test. But really, I mean, here's the scenario, right? We are basically berating a team that has gone down after being favorites abroad in South Africa without their captain and an entirely new setup, right? So, I mean, I think India is going to bounce back. But what was really interesting to note is the transformation that has happened with Bumrah, right? I mean, I don't want to sort of put it onto his married life unless he proclaims it himself, like Kohli has done. But Bumrah has all on a sudden become so aggressive, right? When the match was in its dying moments. I'm not going to speak about KL Rahul's captaincy too much because it could have gone one way or the other. I think the Indian bowlers got it a little bit wrong by attacking the stumps too much, or they were either too full or too short without ever hanging it out in the middle and letting the pitch take it on, right? But what I was disappointed with KL Rahul was that Kohli has really built this siege mentality for the team, right? Whenever you're traveling abroad, you have to sort of rake up all of the elements and say that we are backs to the wall. We are going to give them hell no matter what. And Siraj was sort of following in those footsteps. He's been successful many times. He got hamstrung literally in this test match. But there was a point when he was sort of trying to, sledge Elgar, whether you support it or not. That's a different question. But KL Rahul at one point basically told him, chup chap, okay, go back and bowl, right? Which I didn't feel was right. And at the end, there was a point at which poor Hanuma Vihari got struck by Temba Bavuma when they needed like 6 runs. And Bumrah got so fired up. And the clip is there for everyone to see, right? And he was very conscious of the fact that he was near the stump mic. And he's like, there's one more match. Whoever wants to listen can listen. We are going to turn this around, right? So I think this is going to be the full redemption arc for the Indian cricket team with wins in Australia, England, and hopefully in South Africa in 10 days' time. And what a beautiful journey to be part of.
A couple of points from me, but before that, a point, Tony, you had your VVS Lakshman moment when you said stems.
Thanks, Mohan, for keeping note of the important points.
The couple of points I wanted to make are these. So, one is, and I think Prem Panikar said this beautifully in a tweet. I can't remember exactly the construction of the tweet, but it is something like, why does it take an existential crisis for Pujara? And I'll bring in Rahane as well into this. And this goes back to the point that Nitin made earlier. Because Nitin was sort of crying out for a match ka mujrim in this case, so that there would be a cleanse of those two batsmen, and then we'd have two new faces, or at least one new face. And now it seems unlikely that would happen. But the real point is, why does it take a crisis for that kind of batting to come into play? And that is something that I think the team needs to sit back and really look at very carefully. Because in the wings, you do have a bunch of players that could come in, right? And yes, are they going to be as good as Pujara coming in the first match? Probably not. But it's at some point that you need to blood that talent in. So that's one point I would make around the crisis bringing out that kind of batting when that batting actually exists. The other point is, and far be it for me to preen being a sufferer of the 90s, when the team regularly overpromised and severely underdelivered. This team, have we got used to winning? Have we got used to this team winning so much that we've seen some really fantastic wins abroad? I can reel off names like Multan, Leeds, Perth, Lords, Gabba, of course. So we expect this team to win all the time, and it's a bit like the Australia team in the early 2000s. They were expected to win all the time, and when they lost, it was like it was a national disaster of some sort. So it's okay, and that's going back to PGK's point. It's okay for the team to lose an occasional match, especially to a very, very good team. And this South African team played very well. So have we somehow, as Indian fans, got bored with the victory? Which is what we felt, I think some of us felt in the WhatsApp group at the end of the first test, that we're not feeling that celebratory about it. And by the same token, are we really dissing this team so badly because it lost? So these are 2 points that I want to make.
Sorry, we're definitely taking victory at home is boring. That's become boring. But I don't think victory abroad is boring at all. Like if you look at the last 3 tours, Australia was quite exciting. Even England was very exciting. Even this, I suspect, now has become very, very exciting. So it's nice. It's good. It may become boring in 2-3 years. I hope not, maybe. But now it's fine.
Where it's a little bit different from the Australians or even the West Indies before that is that India are head and shoulders ahead of the other teams, right? I'm sure Tony will bat for New Zealand, but that apart, head and shoulders ahead of everyone else playing Test cricket right now. And that they've managed to do it at a time when, their middle order, their 3 most senior batsmen have not contributed anything. Leads you to believe, okay, just how bad is the rest of the field? I mean, how bad is the opposition that India is able to dominate Test cricket at a time when they have gone through such an extended period of crisis in their own batting, right? And it is true that the standards of teams around the world has dropped, for sure, right? The field is not as close as it used to be. Look at South Africa today, right? They're a shade of what South Africa used to be. England, probably their weakest team in ages, right? And they're getting shown up big time, at the Ashes as well. Australia has one team which is come close to matching India, right? There was a very close tour when they came down to India a few years back as well. And this time when India won in Australia again, it was a very, very hard-fought series, right? And India had to play really well. I think I don't think we're getting bored with victory, but I think we do realize, and I think we should realize, if not, that we are winning at a time when it's easy for India to be a dominating team in Test cricket. And we're not steamrolling our opponents the way the West Indies or Australia used to do back in the day, right? We're doing enough to win. We are still clearly better than everyone else. But this team has the potential to be, so dominant, as dominant as those teams used to be in the past, and they're not there. And that's largely because the batting is just, a complete mess right now.
Yeah. No, I mean, I completely agree with you. We're not only head and shoulders, but we are Pantene, Clinic Plus, Dove, and a few other shampoos above all of the other teams, right? But here's the interesting point. We said we are all like transcontinental in recording during a pandemic. I've seen India win a test match at Wankhede. Srinath has seen India win a test match in the Oval. Mohan's seen India win a test match at the MCG. PGK and Nitins were there when India won a test match in Bangalore while these idiots were chanting RCB, RCB. But over the last 4 to 5 years, what has happened is that India has managed to take 20 wickets in every damn test, right? I think this has been the only time since Adelaide where probably we've not taken more than 13 wickets in quite a while, right? So what has happened?
Maybe the Chennai test route.
No,
century.
Did route declare? I mean, they'd probably have lost at least more than 15 wickets for sure, right? So this is the rare occasion when the bowling is actually something has to be sort of pulled up for a defeat. But I mean, everyone has their off days, right? So I don't think it's a very clearly a bowling era, and it has been since the last 3 to 4 years. And all of the tests we've won is because of our tremendous bowling, whether it's at home with both pace and spin, or away, where we're just blowing away oppositions, right? So I think it's a great place to be, purely because we are a great side, but also they keep us interested, and the romance lies in the fact that it is still unpredictable.
Just like we all missed. So I was just going to say, just like we all missed Shastri and Kohli, Tony just brushed off Southampton in the World Test Championship final. I'm conscious.
That never happened, dude.
I'm fully conscious. Yeah, go on.
That's because we are only. Tony was only talking about 5-day cricket. 6-day matches don't count.
Correct. It's a different format.
I was just going to say the turnaround. I mean, the way we're talking about our cricket, and this we'll expand on this theme in future podcasts, is for a large part of the overpromised, under-delivered 90s, or even in the early 2000s, right? The problem was we didn't have a pace attack, and we didn't have an opening batting attack as well. I mean, we didn't have an opening batting setup. We were always looking for bits and pieces cricketers, thank you very much, to occupy the opening spot. We had so many people sort of drafted into the opening spot who could bowl a little bit, who could bat a little bit, who could offer that balance in the team. So the opening was always a problem at both ends, the bowling as well as the batting. Now there is, if dare I say it, a glut of opening batsmen and a glut of opening bowlers as well. As the bench strength, I hate that word, but the bench strength is pretty strong in both departments. And I think that should contribute. Going back to Nitin's point, this has come at a time when 3, 4, and 5 have really not done much together, and sometimes even individually. But it's because of the top end and the back end, the bookends of the team are really strong, both in terms of quality as well as depth. And that, I think, must count for a lot. So then you start to ask, what if the middle order is also strong? I mean, what if we had Dravid, Tendulkar, and Lakshman in this team? What would they do, right? That's the question that we will probably explore. Not that I'm saying that Dravid, Tendulkar, and Lakshman should be drafted into this team, but I'm saying, if you take that as a hypothesis and explore that, it is quite fascinating. We have the bookends of the team really solid.
Also an appropriate time to say #thank you Shastri for the opening batsman.
Miss you, Shastri.
miss you Shastri. Just quick detour about Shastri and how like a semi-urban legend from Twitter about how Shastri was at a bar in Jamaica when he just had the brainwave to anoint Rohit as the next test opener for the series against South Africa. I think it was one of the regulars on cricket Twitter who had posted it saying, "I was at the bar when this happened." So thank you, Shastri.
Yeah, I mean, whatever you say about him, Shastri has set the bar really high, right?
The only question I have is, when Shastri was at the bar, was Sunil Gavaskar in his ear, with his fake Jamaican accent? For all you know, the idea was seated in a fake Jamaican accent.
Another segment idea there.
Yes, ma.
Who's that story? There is a story about someone writing a poem or this thing in and asking Sunil Gavaskar to recite it in that Jamaican accent, and that recording is kept somewhere. I heard it in some podcast. I'm not able to remember it right now, but that person was explaining this, how it basically he recorded it and he asked Sunil Gavaskar to record it, and he did it and went back.
Sorry, in this particular bar incident, what happened actually was that they were making a fancy cocktail which required raw heat, but in the Jamaican accent, it sort of sounded to Shastri like Rohit, and that's how Rohit Sharma got back into the test team. Right, sorry. So moving on.
If there's actually a recording of Sunil Gavaskar reciting a poem in a fake West Indian accent, somebody just needs to make that recording, put it out there on OpenSea, and we could just kill Web3 altogether. Like, imagine that would be the antithesis of an NFT, right? It stands for everything that should not be on the internet. Really.
It's a Web3 vaccine. Like, eliminate Web3 altogether.
Oh dear.
Oh, now I remember. It is basically that. Do you remember that Calypso song? The one that basically says how you could not get Gavaskar out?
Yes.
I think that was the one. I think that was the one where Gavaskar himself records it in that fake Western accent. But and the person who was telling this story also said that I don't know where that recording is. I have to go search for it. And so
Lord Relator, I think.
We should talk about the squad in Cape Town. Last test, final test. What are we going to see?
My expectation is that Kohli will be back as captain. His back spasm lasted a couple of hours, as I saw it on TV. So he should be back. I'm not conspiracy theorizing here, but yeah, he should be back in the final test, which I think will leave the team with a few problems on what to do and who to drop. Because how can you drop Hanuma Vihari after what he did? You can't drop Shardul Thakur. So you really
they'll drop Hanuma Vihari. I don't think it's much of a contest.
I think Vihari will definitely make way for Virat Kohli in the final test. I don't know if it's the right move or not, if it's right for Hanuma Vihari, if it's fair, but I'm pretty sure that's what they're going to do. But I also feel Siraj might not play, right? Because Siraj he was and also there was a lot of bowling load, right? Not just on Siraj. Because of Siraj's injury, I think the other two fast bowlers bowled a lot. We might see a curveball on the morning of the test match with either one of Bumrah or Shami as well missing out. It's possible. But the good thing is there is enough bench strength. You do have Ishant Sharma, who I'm sure is raring to go.
And he's tall as well.
And Umesh Yadav.
But who do you pick? Assuming that Siraj is out.
This is going to, definitely Ishant is playing in place of Siraj purely because Siraj is injured. And Ishant is tall, right? Now we've discovered that the key to success in South Africa is being a tall man, as Sunil Gavaskar
but it is tall with pace.
Tall man.
It's not just tall. It's tall with pace, not tall at Ishant's speed.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Ishant's going to come in for
Ishant has
Siraj.
the pace.
But I want to point out to the listeners the overwhelming demographic representation of TAMS here, that they're not even considering fucking dropping Ashwin, who's done fuck all in South Africa. In England, all of these guys were up in arms saying Ashwin should play. Yeah, Ashwin has played 2 tests, dude. He's batted well, but I'm sure Kohli can bat almost as well as Ashwin. So,
I don't think. As speaking on behalf of the TAMS here, let me just say that I think it wouldn't have been an unreasonable choice to drop Ashwin and get another pace bowler at Wanderers. I think that would have been fine. At least I wouldn't have complained. It's fine. But of course, we all know that Ashwin contributed with the bat. So who knows? We may have lost.
By the way, I do have to come in there, right? Yes, Ashwin, we scored pitifully few runs in the first innings, but it would have been far lesser if not for the 46 that Ashwin scored. That apart, I thought Ashwin on day 3 evening was amongst the best spells that I've seen Ashwin bowl. And he got that wicket. He was turning the ball big. And I think Rahul Dravid mentioned this after the test match, right? They decided to go with Ashwin, open the bowling with Ashwin on the last day because they knew that the outfield was wet and that he would not be able to come.
The ball would get wet. They were mostly worried about the ball.
Exactly. The ball was going to get wet.
Dry, so you go with it.
So they wanted to start off with him, right? And that's exactly what happened. 3-4 overs in, you could see that he was not effective, and he really didn't have a role to play. I do feel if it didn't rain, Ashwin would have come into the game in a big way.
This is where you underestimate and think everyone is as good as Shastri, right? Only Ravi Shastri could have pulled off a get the ball Ash at
Get the ball, Ash!
and at MCG and got all those wickets.
But
So
that's
not everyone's a
something that he should-
Dravid. I'm sorry, Dravid.
Well,
you're not
I
doing
wish
a good job.
Dravid had said at the end of this loss, wear it like a badge, because they do need to do that and come back strong in Cape Town, which I think they will do. But in my team list, there is a question mark on Ashwin, and so I'm.
So what do
just
they do
trying
if they
to-
don't play Ashwin? You play an extra batter?
Yeah, Kohli comes in for
Keep
Ashwin.
Vihari-
Like,
Oh, okay.
I
So
would
keep
keep
Vihari in
Vihari.
the team.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. I'll
As
keep Vihari in
VVS would
four
say,
pace.
Arsha was asking about whether to play Anuma or Ashwin.
Guys,
Four
I'll tell
bowlers?
you the most important reason for India to play Ashwin, right? It has nothing to do with his batting. It has nothing to do with how well he's been bowling. It's got to do with overrates, man.
Yeah.
You need a spinner and you don't have Ravindra Jadeja right now. So Ashwin has to play because otherwise the umpires are going to give India negative marks. And India will somehow, end up in the 20th spot in the WTC table. And for all you know, Ireland will play Bangladesh in the final of the WTC. Ireland will be at 0 because everyone else who's playing is going to cop negatives. There's so much of time that's getting wasted. We are heading towards apocalypse. What right do these cricketers have to waste all our time? Like, how can they be taking an extra half an hour, an extra 20 minutes? 20 minutes is enough time for me to watch an episode of Seinfeld. No soup for the Indian cricketers. No soup for overrate violators. They all need to be banned. They all need to be stripped of their points in the WTC. They all need to be paraded out there. Every time you bowl, every time you're, down on your overrate, you need to have free hits in Test cricket, right? If you're down on overrate, you need to, you just bowl 3. If you're short 3 overs, you get 3 overs of free hits, right? For the other team.
But
Yeah.
Nitin, I want to tell you
I haven't thought this
that
through.
when Seinfeld was re-aired, they actually sped it up to 1.15x or something so they can play extra ads, right? So your comparison with Seinfeld actually sort of says that bowlers need to be bowling at 1.5x speed, dude. Like, that's where this podcast is being consumed at 1.5x. What do you mean? Like, bowlers get leeway and you can basically take as much time as you want to bowl your overs, which brings us to a segment which we will hope to keep going, which is called Overrated, which is the dumbest rules in cricket today. I think Nitin will kick it off with the penalty points in WTC. But interestingly, Nitin, now what they've done is they've actually gone ahead and added a new rule to 2020. Do you want to elaborate on that?
No, I really look forward to see how the IPL deals with this new rule, because the rule has
Yeah,
come
but
in
first
infinitely
explain
quick.
the rule for our listeners, because I think that's also important.
Yeah, what are the exact details? So if you haven't started your final over on time, then what happens? I've forgotten.
You get an
Lose.
extra fielder inside the circle, so you lose an
You lose the
outfielder.
ability to put an.
This
yeah,
is-
you lose an outfielder.
Just for the listener, I
does-
think this is straight from the 100. So you bring in an extra fielder if you don't start the last over.
Oh, it's from the
within
100, is
yeah.
it?
It's from the 100, yeah.
Oh, I thought it was like a literal
that makes a
interpretation.
lot of sense.
Literal
I
interpretation.
love the 100,
of the
right?
phrase, boundary
I
conditions.
love the 100. Before they even fined cricketers and came up with overrate penalty, they just penalized overs in the format itself. They said, we won't do 20 overs. You won't do 20 overs on time. We won't let you even start 20 overs. You stop at 100.
We won't do 16.4 overs, yeah.
Cricket at its best. So explain the new rule to me, right? So let's say that I need to have started my 20th over now, but I've just started, let's say, my 14th over because I've been faffing around. What happens now? For the remaining next 6 overs, I need to have how many extra fielders inside the circle?
I don't think it's 1 per over. I think it's just like 1 for the next 6
Oh, it's
overs.
just 1. Oh, that would have been fun. Imagine having 10 fielders around the bat and getting back.
I like how you guys are
No, it's
assuming
one
that the
fewer,
ICC
Srinath.
has
So-
thought all of this through. We all saw the 2019 World Cup finals, dude, where they didn't actually factor for what happens if there is a tie in the damn Super Over.
No, I didn't watch. The moment that game exceeded 7 hours, I switched off. I went away, dude. Like, who watched the World Cup final? Who has time to watch stuff that goes overtime? Please tell me. I mean, I have Netflix. I have other things to do. I have threads to write on Twitter. Not happening.
Yeah.
Nitin, it's the same ICC that has introduced infinite super overs in case of a repeat to the 2019 final. So it works both ways for them.
It reminds me of an article, all this conversation that was on Cricinfo, maybe even some 10 years ago, Sriram Dayanand wrote it, basically saying, stop pissing in my coffee. And essentially taking the piss out of the changes that were happening to the ODI setup. So frequently, there was super subs and then something that happened at the toss, and they had substitutes that could be drafted in. You couldn't have a runner. You could all sorts of changes constantly to the game. And the construction. This conversation reminds me of that, because there are some changes that just don't make sense, and this is one of them. But I think we should allow Nitin to have his rant.
No, but I think the interesting point is
Nitin has been ranting for the last 10 minutes.
At least a super sub or something else makes a different kind of change, right? But who the hell is bothered about overrate in Test cricket, man? We want to watch it for 5 days. We put in a 6th day for the WTC final, which never happened, by the way.
But let's go back to where the overrate problem actually started, right? And how it's morphed into some kind of a beast. Where it actually started, and sometimes these rule changes happen for a particular reason. And I think as it gets morphed, we forget where we started, and we keep changing and fiddling around at the edges, making the rule currently completely undecipherable from where it actually started. Where it actually started was teams deliberately slowing down the game so that the opposition does not have enough time to bat for victory or any such thing. So that's where it kind of started, and it was couched in the framework that the audience needs to have its money's worth. They come in to pay 90 overs. No, they come in to pay to watch cricket. But they don't. But it's as if the cricket administrators have some sort of contract with the viewers saying, we'll give you 90 overs, even if a player has to break their leg. No, that's not the contract. The contract is we'll give you a nice game. So they basically started with something which is sensible, which is let's not allow teams to fiddle with the rules and slow the game down and deny the other team the opportunity to win, and made it something completely different. And that's the beef, I think.
But no, sorry, I don't think that was the reason at all. I don't think it began there. The whole point where it began, yes, partly it was that you didn't want the teams to like slow down this thing, etc. But we cannot talk about overrates and penalties without talking about broadcasters. Fundamentally, it's a broadcaster-driven requirement, right? That is the main reason. This is happening only because broadcasters who are doing cricket basically want predictability in their entire schedule, and hence that's what's coming in.
You're saying reason. Per hour they need ad inventory as opposed to the entire stretch of the match.
No, but bad.
I mean, maybe basically you get breaks at the end of each over, right? So as long as all the overs are bowled, or you get a half an hour.
I'm pretty sure it is broadcaster driven. It's not anything else.
In limited overs, yeah, for sure.
I can understand broadcasters having a problem because of extensions, right? They definitely, like Star Sports, I'm sure, wants to cut to, their studio show, which is great fun, which is what people are really sitting to watch. So I'm sure they have a problem with that, right? Like, bring on the studio show. Why am I watching the last hour of
Let me watch VVS Lakshman say Ravinder Jadeja, Ravindra.
Or worse, Shekhar Diwan.
Actually, Mohan, I have a question there. Since you mentioned that the original argument for overrates was because of gamesmanship. In my years of cricket watching, at least, I have not come across test matches being gamed this way. I remember one test match where England won in the darkness in Karachi, where you could see Pakistan were actually trying to, try and get away with a draw by drawing out the game, and Steve Buckner, who was the umpire there, would have none of it. I remember him forcing them to go through. But I don't recall another test match in the time when I watched test cricket where overrate gamesmanship has actually had an impact or seemed like it could have an impact on the outcome.
Look, let's not deny there's gamesmanship at every level in cricket. There's absolutely no...
Absolutely.
Let's not deny that. I mean, the last over before a lunch break, batsmen will try and slow the game, or the bowling team might try and slow the game depending on who wants to do that. So that level of gamesmanship exists. Now you can extend that argument to say, it might exist across a variety of spaces, right? So it does exist. So obviously, when someone started looking at this very seriously, that may have been a consideration. But I take PJK's point as well that it's likely to be broadcaster driven. I question that in the test match format. I think it's okay to look at that as a requirement in other formats, particularly given the short duration. But the test match has a languid pace to it. So I don't know if it requires that level of monitoring and governance.
The 100 itself is born out of a broadcaster requirement for overrates, right? Like it's a 3-hour window and you need to switch to BBC prime time at 9 p.m. or whatever. And therefore it's 180 minutes max and it's policed in a way. So limited overs makes sense. Test cricket, don't know.
And the most interesting thing is we are now in probably the most exciting era in test cricket, right? Most games have results. The ones that don't have results end up being, skin of the teeth draws, which are actually more fun than the result games. And result games very often end in much lesser than 5 days, right? You're almost never having a situation where running out of overs is costing you a result. It's literally never happened. The game is great to watch. Broadcasters are getting, if anything, broadcasters are getting shortchanged because they're planning for 5 days of action and games are ending in 3.5 days. If anything, they should be happy if 3.5 becomes 3.6 or 3.7. Yeah. I just don't get the argument at all for overrates. And you have a WTC cycle where actually every match is now meaningful, and that's when the ICC has chosen to come in and start penalizing team for overrates and not anything.
I totally agree. Let's look at it differently. But for that overrate penalty in Melbourne, Australia may have been India's opponent.
Which is ridiculous, right? And we would have won, damn it. And then I would have remembered the WTC final. which brings us to the world's #1 team. Oh, sorry, no, wait, that's India. But another team down in the southern hemisphere, New Zealand, which won some random ICC trophy, which is of great interest purely because Amazon Prime is now streaming games instead of Sony Live and Hotstar. What a great time to be alive, right? And I think Amazon Prime, based on all of the apps that we've seen, if you want to sponsor us, please go ahead. But their coverage seems a little bit more stable, and you can actually watch from the beginning of the coverage till the end. Hotstar allows you to do it for like the last 15 minutes, I think, and Sony Live not at all. But great for cricket that Disney has managed to take over Hotstar and Amazon is getting into streaming.
So I'm obviously missing something. What's the connection between that and the WTC final?
Oh, no. The New Zealand is playing Bangladesh currently, in case you didn't realize. And losing.
So basically, we have cricket on 3 apps. We have Hotstar for the India-South Africa. We have Amazon for the New Zealand this thing. As we all know, Sony Live does not have an app. Somebody's going to come on Shark Tank on Sony Live and say that we're going to create an app. So something on Sony Live, some apparatus, we see some snatches of the Ashes here and there, and then it crashes. So yeah, that's what's happening.
Well, Sony Live might be interested in sponsoring this because we put it out there that they have something.
But no, actually, Sony Live and CricBus have a actual real tie-up, right? Because and this is true. Like you can watch the playback on CricBus if you have and they have a tie-up purely because Sony Live crashes so many times that people go to CricBus, right? Like now it's a relevant thing again that you can follow ball by ball commentary in the middle of a pandemic.
Just rounding off that conversation before we go back to New Zealand, it's interesting that Bangladesh won in New Zealand, and that has to be mentioned. A really famous victory. No one thought they could pull it off, and my own view is that win is perhaps greater than India winning at the Gabba, simply because of the gap between New Zealand and Bangladesh, and also New Zealand is as a country is a fortress. Gabba is just Fortress Gabba, but still an amazing victory there. But it's nice to see this today. We're on the first day of the New Zealand-Bangladesh test, and regular programming is resumed.
Oh yeah, this is actually like Ibadat Hussain took 6 for 46, and today he had a catch dropped when New Zealand went 92 for 0. In the slips, New Zealand ran 3 runs, and someone stopped the boundary and threw the ball back, and it went for 4 overthrows. So Ibadat Hussain had a catch dropped off his bowling and conceded 7 runs. So this is in some sense a metaphor for the vaccine ending the pandemic and suddenly Omicron coming on, right? So that's where we are.
It's important to visualize the geography of what exactly happened, right? So the catch was dropped. I was just watching the replay that you had shared, Tony. Yeah. So just for the benefit of our listeners, the ball went to slip put down the catch. The ball ran away towards.
It went to first slip. Second slip jumped in front of first slip and dropped the catch and went all the way down. But please continue.
And it ran away. It dribbled away down slowly to fine leg. New Zealand, obviously, very good at out cricket, nice guys and all of that. They quickly ran 3. Somebody ran down to fine leg, picked up the ball, hurled it back at the bowler's end, where Ibadat, who was, smarting from the fact that, a catch was dropped and so many runs were going, fumbled the ball, let the ball go all the way back straight down towards the boundary. And who was the fielder who ran behind the ball?
Ibadat.
Ibadat himself. So his name is Eba. But that was not a dot ball.
Wow.
I think when you see teams like Bangladesh play, especially in situations like this, you start to get a sense of what happens when the pressure really mounts. And they're very close to something really special, or something really, it's not going for them, and everybody starts to lose their mind. So Ibadat, when he balls the ball and the slip drops the catch, you can hear Ibadat on the stump mic audibly swearing. He's like upset, he's furious, and then he's walking back. As he's walking, when the ball is coming again, the fielders are really excited and screaming, bowler, 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 and then that's when Ibadat turns, what's going on? The ball goes past him. I mean, this does not happen in elite teams, they just like a real calm about it. Imagine Bumrah, how many catches get dropped off a Bumrah or a Shami. They just like look at it and say, okay, fine, this happens, it's okay, let's go back.
Just a minute, have you ever witnessed Kumble and Srinath taking
exactly what I was thinking.
Exactly what used to happen.
Yeah, so there's a small nuance there, right? Either you're an elite cricketer or you're very elite in the sense that you have experienced this so many times in the past that, your mind is just numb to it, which was largely Srinath's take back in the day. But going back to that win, what an incredible win for Bangladesh. They did it without Shakib in the 11, without Tamim Iqbal. At least if these two guys were playing, you could expect, Bangladesh putting up their hands and competing with New Zealand. But in their absence, to do it against New Zealand at home, big deal. And I know Kane Williamson was not playing, but still it was a full-strength New Zealand team, except for Williamson. So amazing win. Definitely the biggest win of the year. I doubt we'll see a bigger upset.
They've got this big 4, right? Like Mahmudullah, Shakib, Tamim, and Mushfiqur. Mahmudullah is retired. The other 2 are not playing. Mushfiq was probably one of the, ones least contributing to the win. So I think there's Russell Denyon on Twitter who had this, I think it's an ELO point system. So the ELO rating system, where I think the difference between the quality of New Zealand and the quality of Bangladesh is like apparently the highest ever in Test cricket history. And that's going back 140 years to teams starting out. And there's a lot of teams that have started out. New Zealand took 31 years to register their first Test win. So they were pretty bad. South Africa, pretty bad, 1900s and so on. You can just go back all the way. And if you take all of that history and you see this gulf in quality, it's pretty incredible.
Yeah. Also, what's happening in this series, guys, is Ross Taylor is retiring. And what a 2-stage career, right? Nitin, till you told me that thing about Ross Taylor's eye, which I think we should tell our listeners, I didn't even know, how he's basically played for my entire life. I mean,
cricket watching life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually don't recall the full details, but sometime late in his career, Ross Taylor accidentally found out that he has some issue with his eye, which he then got rectified. And only at that point in his life did he actually start seeing properly. So he suddenly was able to see a cricket ball
like a football.
Like a football. Literally, he was seeing the ball like a football. And he had always assumed that, okay, cricket ball does look like a table tennis ball. And he was doing fairly well. He was one of the better batsmen in New Zealand even before his eye got repaired. But yeah, the latter stages of his career, I think he really came to the fore, especially in one-day cricket. I don't think people track New Zealand and their one-day exploits much. But Ross Taylor has been a run machine in the last 4 or 5 years, especially in the one-day format. And a lot of that is because suddenly he started seeing the ball. And he was like, oh, okay, I can actually see this again now.
He was the closest to Kohli during peak Kohli in ODIs, I think, average-wise and records-wise.
Yeah, but just imagine a full career where he had his actual vision, right? Like, that would have been monstrous, dude. Like, he's still one of the greatest of all times, but just imagining Ross Taylor's full potential if he had discovered this earlier is like mind-boggling. Salute to Ross Taylor for the last test. I think one of the things that happened when PGK was talking about swearing on the stump mic, we don't, at least as this group, we don't really rate umpires too highly. But umpire Palekar in South Africa, am I getting it right? Alauddin Palekar had a tremendous test, right? From start to finish. And by finish, I mean Shardul Thakur actually was running into bowl. And one of the South African batsmen basically just pulled away when they needed like 10 runs or something like that. And he basically went, what the fuck, man, on stump mic, right? And umpire Palekar stepped in with a smile, said, language. So it was beautiful to see. What an amazing umpiring debut. So hats off to Alauddin Palekar.
Indeed. He comes from an umpiring family, is what Sunil Gavaskar, someone else told us. Sunil Gavaskar said something about, curse in the South African system.
Can't be, Mohan.
Yeah. No. Sunil Gavaskar is only talking about Rishabh Pant for 4 hours, so it can't be anything about. Okay.
No,
you're like,
actually,
he killed Rishabh Pant's family, killed someone.
He did talk about curse in the South African system. He didn't say curse. He talked about curse in the South African system, but he also talked about how he lifted a Marathi actor and did his back, and that was the only time he ever did his back in playing Test cricket.
Yes. So Kohli got a back spasm because he's lifting too much in the gym. Like, why would you
see? Why? So Sunil Gavaskar is always doing the heavy lifting in the commentary box very clearly. I think Srinath ranting about Sunil Gavaskar's commentary should be a podcast on its own, but he's too nice to do that unless you want to have a go right now, Srinath.
It's a future episode. I think it should be.
It deserves its own space into an NFT. Yeah.
NFT,
I think we should talk a little about South Africa as well. We've spoken about India, we've spoken about News, but we haven't spoken about South Africa. Man, but I think from what an innings by Dean Elgar. I think it was, for a long time, I always looked at Dean Elgar as one of those Graham Smith light. Okay, which is basically, but he's like done phenomenally well in this series. And of course, he's had his share of luck and things have been like missing the bat left, right, and center, but still. And I think more than that, I'm just really, really impressed by Bauma. I think Bauma has started to like become one of those players that we think is going to be quite formidable in the years to come. So if South Africa tour India, I have a feeling that someone like a Bauma or even a Peterson is going to cause some trouble.
Shout out to Keegan Peterson, dude. He looks so good. I mean, just any shot he plays. I mean, even the first test, I think he
looks almost as good as Shardul Thakur while batting. Okay, so
plus Ravi Ashwin, Ravichandran Ashwin plus Shardul Thakur by 2 is Keegan Peterson. Elegance personified.
I think the hope is that this is the start of like South Africa reviving their Test cricket, because it's been bad for a while now, effectively, because you've got these guys who are pretty much red ball specialists. You've got an Elgar, Peterson, a couple of guys whom they're trying to force into white ball cricket, in Bauma and Maharaj, for example. So it's basically a core full of red ball specialists, and with the Kolpak system pretty much coming to an end, they're getting guys coming back. Like Olivier is an example. He had pretty much retired from internationals for South Africa, but he's come back after Brexit, and Kolpak just, again, a whole different episode. But I think like it's the core with the red ball team that can hopefully get better.
A quick point on the wicketkeeper. I think apart from the fact that he's got a fantastic name for a angry wicketkeeper, Varian. Tam joke.
I thought you were going to say Vera Enna Venam or something like that.
But I thought he kept really competently, and he's got stuff with the bat as well. I think he can contribute long term. I like the team. I like the balance of the team. I like the potential that they have. Inevitably we have to talk about the next test and the possible result. I think the momentum is with the South Africans. They could carry it on without and win the series without Kohli. But I think Kohli and the energy that he brings to the field will be the difference in my view.
And a charged up Bumrah, who is definitely playing. I don't care who tells Bumrah to sit this one out. He's not. Based on what we saw on the last day.
Why would he sit it out?
Oh, because you need to sort of protect Bumrah as well, right? And
this is like leaving Anderson and Broad out of the Gabba test. So it's not going to happen. Not going to happen.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I'm just saying Bumrah is going to run through walls to play this test match. So I think
he will Cape Town more spin friendly. Isn't it more spin friendly in general? No.
It's the only
again,
one that
push the agenda to keep Ash in the team. Push it. Like,
I think we've already done that. Ash has to play for overrates, man. Like, he's the
Yeah.
person who's keeping you in WD.
I think Hanuma Vihari can bowl, no?
Exactly.
My team has got
for me,
Ash
it was
For that,
slash
Hanuma Vihari
Hanuma.
has to play.
exactly. It would have been perfectly reasonable to do that in Wanderers. I think keep Vihari for the overrates, keep Thakur, keep Kohli, but I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
see them doing it in Cape Town. It's
But
difficult.
let's be honest. I mean, Vihari is not really a fifth bowler. He's barely a sixth bowler, really.
That's
You can't play him as your lone spinner. It's a bit weird.
That's true.
All right. So I think this is a good time to round up the podcast with our predictions for the final test on this first episode of Bits and Pieces. Hopefully not the only one, because this has been quite enjoyable, at least so far for us, I must add. So let's round it up. Mohan, what do you think is going to be the final score?
Look, it's going to be close in my view. I actually thought that we would do really well in the Highveld. I had to get the South African accent in. I really thought we would do well but the momentum is with the Saffers at the moment. They won extremely well. So I think it's going to be very close, and I wouldn't be surprised if India loses. They would really have to play with a lot of spunk, much more than what they did in the previous test. Close. I'm predicting sort of 55-45 South Africa.
Okay. Srinath?
Kohli regresses to mean loses the toss. India win a close one, 2-1 to India.
PGK?
I think India's bowlers are going to come back in full form and full fire. I don't see India's bowlers having two tests back to back, having an off test. That's not going to happen. I think, I have a feeling that it all depends on the 3-4-5. We've all seen situations where people who have, on the verge of being kicked out, and they come back and make that 50, and then they stick on for the next 10 tests, and all of those 10 tests are like sub 20 scores. So I have a fear that Pujara and Rahane may end up not contributing. So it obviously comes back to Kohli. So I think India should win. I don't think it shouldn't happen. I feel like South African bowlers are slightly more tired. They're slightly more exhausted. I feel like India should win.
Nitin?
I like how Srinath spoke about the toss when you asked him about the result. It's part of the package once Virat Kohli comes in. Yes, I too feel India will lose the toss, but I think India will win a tight test match with Virat Kohli contributing significantly with the bat. Probably as captain as well. Definitely the Indian bowlers doing better this test match, but I think Kohli as batsman, I think the time has come.
Yeah, I think there used to be a point in time when all of our WhatsApp conversations were around why can't Kohli win a damn toss, right? And we had this statistical analysis which suggested that toss advantage is greater than home advantage, or tagta for short. Times have passed. Actually, if this podcast was born like a couple of years ago, that would probably have been the title of the podcast itself, right? But India has since
Then we'd have to change the title after the Australia series. But
yeah, India has since kicked on, and I think my prediction is going to be a massive Indian win in Cape Town, and sort of completing the full sort of arc for Indian Test cricket, as it were. So that brings us to
I have to say, this is the guy that said India will be 83 for no loss. in which test was it? Was it Leeds?
Yeah,
and then we were bundled up
one of those.
Forever the Indian optimist.
Yeah. I've been waiting to see actually India win abroad for the last 3 to 4 years. I believe they could have done it in South Africa 2018. England actually 2018, Australia they did it, but now it will be great. The funny thing will be we'll win Australia, we'll win South Africa, and then we have to go back and play that one-off test in England.
Exactly,
which they'll win.
Been great. It would have been great to sign off 2021 with a win in England, and now that's as Shastri put it in his retirement.
Definitely losing
the longest series.
Wait a sec. Why?
I thought that test.
But have they announced that it's going to be the fifth test of that series?
No, they'll do it post facto. If India wins,
exactly.
it will be added on.
Exactly. So we have already won a test series in England. We might end up winning 2. So it's all 2. It's great. Just like the WTC final, we'll have a one-off test match, which we may lose. If we lose, it's a one-off. It doesn't count. If we win, we won another series in England. So it's all good. It's all good.
Okay, fine.
Here you go.
PGK, as the veteran podcaster, how do we round it up? How do we ask people to subscribe, share? What are those formalities that we need to take care of?
Just say subscribe. Dude,
Just
what do you
say-
mean, veteran podcaster? You are the one who's running this thing.
No,
Srinath is here. You are here.
Yeah, we very famously run podcasts just for ourselves, not for actually getting a following, etc. But if you do are still listening to this podcast, like it, please share with your friends, because this is just episode 1, and we hope to keep this going for a very long time. It's obviously easier when India is playing, but we hope to do this every week because it's been fun so far. And we'll have a rotating roster of co-hosts, each equally garbage / fun / insightful, and we'd love for you to be a part of this conversation. Thank you for joining us on Bits and Pieces episode 1. We're all signing off with this. Bye. Say bye, guys.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.